Hello everyone, here Alberto Rosas, the CEO of Didit. Today we're going to explain how to do the integration of Didit through API. So here you have the console. We have another video just explaining how the console works. You have here organizations, and then you have applications inside every organization. And then once you have your application, you can go and click the verification tab. Okay, so here you're going to have all the verification that your application has performed. And if you go and click here on settings, you're going to see all the information needed for API integration. Just remember, there is currently three types of integration that you can do. One is just using the console. So you can go here and just create verifications, and then you can send it to the email address of the user or directly send the URL generated through your user. Okay, yeah, let's do one so you can see. So you generate a link, and then you can send that link to the user, and then he's able to perform the verification. And if you realize here, we just created another one. So this is the first way of integrating Didit. There is no coding requirements, nothing. You just go to the console and you perform everything from there. There is other integration that we just added, which is the Zapier integration. So we have another video for that, but you can just click Didit on Zapier, and you can add the actions of Didit to create sessions and to retrieve the session result directly on Zapier. So now we're going to review exactly the API integration, which is a normal integration that the customer is performing. And for that, we just have to go here on settings, and then we have information for the API integration. So which field do you have? We have the client ID, we have the client secret, then we have the webhook URL. This is which URL do we want to send the updates to? So it's going to be in the backend of the customer, and then we have the secret key just to verify that the hooks that we are sending they are sent by Didit and not by any other service. So you have all that information, and everything is needed for the API integration. So let's go to the docs.didit.me. Here we can find all the documentation regarding Didit, specifically for the identity verification solution. And then we can go to the API reference. Okay, so here we are on the authentication. So it's a very simple integration. It's just a couple APIs and webhooks. So very, very simple. First thing we need to do is authentication. So we need to authenticate through Didit with our application credentials. So in this case, the client ID and the client secret, which we can find here. Okay, with client ID and the client secret. So the client ID obviously is public, but the client secret, you should not provide this client secret to anyone. You just have to keep it secret for sure. So first thing we need to do is authenticate through the API, and we're going to receive an access token. Okay, so yeah, this is an example of how to do it. You need to encode using base64 the client ID and client secret separated by a semicolon. So it will look something like this. Okay, the code you can do. So let's fill the client ID and client secret, for example. So we have this client ID here, and then we put the client ID. We put the client ID here. Okay, and then let's add the client secret. Okay, so for the client secret, we put it here, and then we run this command. So what we receive, as you can see, is an access token and an expiration of this access token. Currently, the expiration is set to 1 day, so every day you will need to get a new access token. Okay. And if you want to check what the access token contains, we can go here. You can go to decoding the access token. And as you can see, you have different claims depending on the permission that your application has. You have an organization ID, a client ID, whatever. And then you have the expiration here. As you can see, set for 24 hours since today. Okay, so pretty clear. And you're going to use this access token to authenticate through the other two APIs. So the important thing is to create a verification session. So normally there is a one-to-many relation between a user and a verification session. Normally it's going to be one. You create a verification session for every user, but it can be many. depending on the status of the verification, or depending on if the document has expired or if you want to verify more documents from the user. But anyways, so you create a verification session. You have to call these. So you have different parameters here. Okay, so you have the callback, which is the URL that you want the user to be redirected after the process. Then you have the futures, where you have a combination of different ones. It's a string separated by the plus symbol. If you have the AML activated, you can use AML. If not, the most common thing is just OCR plus face, which is document verification plus the biometric verification process. And then you can put vendor data. Normally here, you're gonna add some kind of information to identify the user later. So maybe the user UID or the user email, whatsoever. So let's try this now. So we have this access token that we're gonna add here. As you see, you have to add the access token on the authorization header, okay? And then, yeah, let's use this user identifier one for the vendor data. We add the OCR plus face, and then let's add, yeah, this callback. But this callback normally is going to be on your website, okay? So let's try to perform this and let's see the result. So now I created a verification session, okay? And as we can see here, we have a session ID, a session token, session number, a callback, and a status, okay? The most important thing here is the URL. So this URL is going to be used for the user to start the verification process. So if I go here to the URL and I open it, okay, then my user is going to start the verification session using that URL. So he's going to scan the QR code with the phone, or using the phone, he's going to start the process right away. And then once the user start filling and processing doing the verification, then all the data related to the user is going to appear here with the session ID you just created. The C85, as you can see, is the C85. You just created that one. Okay, so everything is going to be here, all the information and all the information related to the user. Okay. And then we have another API, okay? So this is the first one to create the session, and then the last one is to retrieve the session. So the session ID you just created, okay, is just a request you're going to do using the session ID for the verification you just created, and also, again, using the access token from the authentication process. So it's going to be, yeah, let's just use, again, this access token, okay? Let's use it again here. And then let's just use the session ID we just created to see the result of this verification. Normally, you're going to use webhook, and this you are not going to use so much this endpoint, but just for the purpose of this video, I'm going to show it. So normally, here you have the process. So you have the session ID with the status which is not started, the vendor data you use for creating the session, then you have the callback and all this kind of information, the KYC information about the user and so on. Because the user has not started the process, then you don't see very interesting information on that call. But yeah, with just that two endpoints to create a verification session and then to retrieve the result of the session, you can do everything. Okay, so very simple API. You have the URL returned for here, and then you send the URL to the user, or you render it as an iframe or a web view, and then the user starts the process, and then you get information. Okay, so yeah, so normally how you're gonna do that? There is let's run an example that we have created, and you're gonna see it. So here we have a Didit full demo. Okay, so this is a demo repository that we have created and is updated through the last version for you to have a template reference of how to integrate that through API. This is on using Next.js, okay, and it's a very simple integration, very vanilla template. You have on the README the steps to reproduce that. You have clone the repository, then you start the dependencies. You just create a user model. You get the M file, whatever, and then you can do start doing verification through the API. So let's review the code a little bit. Okay, so normally what you're going to do obviously is clone the repository. then install the dependencies, and then what you're going to do is modify the end file. Okay, you're going to copy the example and then you modify it. So you're going to retrieve the client ID and client secret from the verification. I'm going to do it again so you can see it. Okay, so I'm going to go here, I'm going to go client ID, then I go here, which is public, then I get the client secret here, and then I get the webhooks secret key, okay, to verify the webhooks, because we're going to receive all the information using webhooks. So here you have. If you are using AML, you're just going to make here the AML, but I'm not going to use it now. For using AML, you will need to add the card and upgrade the billing plan. So let's keep it like this, OCR plus face. If you want to modify the callback URL, you're going to put it here. Very simple, very straightforward. Okay. So I have just added the credential to my M file. Everything looks good. Then this is a typical user model that any application can have with the ID, the name, the email, whatever. This is application specific dependent, so it doesn't matter too much. The only thing you need to have to take in account is that a user will have verification session associated to the user. So it's a one-to-many relation. Here you have the verification session. Here you have, normally there is verified status. So if the user is verified, then you can have also the date of birth or the document expiration as well. Anyway, we send whenever there is a user verification session where the document has expired, we send a webhook as well, so you are aware, so you don't need to store that normally yourself and keep it in account. But yeah, this is an example of how a user model may look like. Okay, so here you have some definition as well, and then you have the definition of the verification session model, which depending on your application, you're going to retrieve the user data. So you can retrieve the name, you can retrieve other information like the document number, you can retrieve the images as well. But normally, to keep it simple, we're only going to retrieve the status of the session, which is something that most of the application are interested in, like if the user is verified, if it's not verified, if it's on review, whatever, then I'm going to just keep that data mainly. So this is the verification session model. And then how it's going to work. Yeah, I'm going to just start the server. So you see it. And then let's see how this application look like. It's just sign in. And then as I can see, I just created a user on this application, which is a customer application. And then I have two ways of integrating that. Okay, so everything is working fine. And then I can do either I can make the user go to the URL I generated on the create verification session. Either I can render it as an iframe, okay, depending on the way you want to do it. Normally, if it's a native application or you want everything like to be embedded on the application, you're going to do an iframe or use a web view. If not, you can just go and use redirect the user to the URL, and then with the callback, it's going to return to your website. So depending on the way you want to do it, it's a very simple way of integrating. So in this case, I'm going to create a verification session, which what I'm doing at the end of the day is just call the create session API on the code. We're going to see later. And then I'm creating this session. So here, as you realize, I receive a URL. So if I go to that URL, then I'm going to start the verification associated to the user. I'm going to start receiving updates for every change of a status. Okay, so if I go here and I start the process and I start doing verification, I'm going to start receiving updates for that specific verification session. As you realize here, okay, in the code, there is a lot of things going on. I created this verification session with the vendor data using the user email, and then the callback, I use the local host to redirect to this local environment, which I'm using currently. So also, if I start the process, okay, what is going to happen is I'm going to receive a webhook for the process started. And let's view exactly how we're going to implement the webhook. So here we have an endpoint, okay, which is to receive the webhooks. And normally the way we're going to receive it and how we will do it is every time that the verification session I just created change the status. So for normally it's going to be not started. So we have all this status, okay, regarding the verification session. So we have not started, which is the initial one. When you create a verification session, it starts or not started. And when the user starts the verification session, so that means it performs the first image for the document verification, for instance. Then the verification changes the status of in progress, and you're going to receive a webhook for this change of status. Then whenever the user finishes it, either it can be approved, either it can be declined, either it can be in review. If the user initiated, but he didn't do the verification, then you're going to receive an expired. If he abandoned it, then you're going to receive an abandoned. And then if the KYC document is expired, you're going to receive another status which is KYC expired, okay? So every change of a status of the verification session, you're going to receive that to your webhook. So very straightforward. Then let's review a little bit the code here for the receiving on the webhook. So what is happening here is you receive a request. Then I'm logging in just for the purpose of this demo. Then you're using the webhook secret key, okay, and to check that the signature of the request is indeed correct, okay? So assuring that Didit is sending this request and not anyone, okay? So this is a very important process for the security of your application. You have to check specifically that Didit is sending the request, okay? So we send it on the header, on the signature, we send that and you verify using that code. You can do that on Python, you can do that on any way, on any programming language. You verify the signature. Normally we verify the timestamp as well, which is optional. You can verify the timestamp to make sure there is not a replay attack or something. And then once you verify that, and for instance, you can update the status of the user. You remember we saw the verification model before, then you can update the status of the verification model assigned to the user ID with this session ID specifically. And if the user is approved, so the status is approved because you receive a webhook which is approved, then you can update the is verified field for the user model to true. Okay, then you know the user is verified. And if the status is declined or any other status, you know the user is not verified. Okay, so very simple integration. Obviously, you can play with that depending on the specific logic of the application. But the general idea here is that, yeah, you have your own front end with your own authentication system like this. You create an account. If the user is not verified, then, and you have to verify it, you create a verification session for the user. URL, you create this verification session calling the create session endpoint. Then you receive a URL associated, you associate that session to the user. And whenever there is some changes to that verification session, so changes on the status of this verification session, you're going to receive webhooks, okay? Very important, I forget about that. You have obviously to indicate Didit where you want to receive these updates. So you can try it out on local environment using tools like ngrok, and you can receive webhooks locally, and you can do it very easily. So whenever you know the hook URL, then what you have to do is go here and just add whenever myapp.com webhook, whatever. Then you're going to receive every change of a status. You're going to receive here specifically on this webhook URL. Okay. So very straightforward. You generate the session, you create the session, you receive the URL, you send that URL to the user, either through a communication method like email, WhatsApp, whatever. Either you integrate it here and with a button, you redirect the user here. Either you do it as an iframe as well, and you load it as an iframe. You can do that on multiple ways. You have the code to check the example of how to do that. And then once the user starts performing that verification session and the status of that verification session changes, you're going to receive a webhook to your webhook URL. You're going to receive every change of a status, and then you know when the user is verified, okay? And on the console, all this session I just created, for instance, I just created that session with that user I just created. You also are able to see that, key all the information, and you are able to see that, and then every change of a status, you're going to see it here, but also you're going to receive the webhook for it. And then you can modify specifically the logic of your application depending on that. So It's a very straightforward integration. You have to authenticate, create the session, and then you receive webhooks. Optionally, you can also retrieve the session if you want to do pooling as well. If you want to do iOS Android, we recommend WebView. If you do web app, we recommend we either using the redirect or either using an iframe, depend on the way you want to do it. So very straightforward, very simple to integrate it. And yeah, we're gonna make updates. Everything is gonna be included on the docs, and anything just text us if you need anything. So thank you, and let's go.